Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Many of us here can agree that Alduin is one of the most imposing figures in all of Skyrim's history. Sure, there have been many tales in Tamriel's history of major events that have occurred in its timeline, which I will all get into in due time, but very few can match the power and terror that is known as Alduin the World Eater, and the true master behind the dragon rule during the Merethic era in Skyrim. Let's put it this way. When we talk about the Daedric princes, we know of their deeds done in Tamriel's past and how disgusting and nasty they were. But at the end of the day, they had followers. People still erected shrines and conducted rituals to gain their favor and influence. Alduin was not like this. He was so feared during his time and the time after that by the second era of Tamriel, no one wanted to admit having worshipped him, even though some did see him as the avatar of Akatosh. Anyone who did admit to praying in his name post-Merethic era only did so hoping that he didn't return. I don't know about you, but when a being has that kind of reputation of being so feared that no one will worship him, something not even Daedras have the distinction of, then they are definitely worth looking into. Okay, one can argue the dragon cult, but their beliefs were more geared towards the dragons as a race and culture and not necessarily a single entity. Which is why in today's lore video, we will be taking a closer look at the lore behind Alduin, the fiercest dragon that has ever stepped into the world of Tamriel. And we will look at all known lore about him, including his actions, personality, and history. This is gonna be a doozy, so make sure you have a good seat for this one, as I do while I'm currently sitting here talking about this video. As always, if you enjoy the lore content I put out, please consider subscribing to the channel. We will be putting out stories ranging from large scale to small one-off stories, but all will be relating to the Elder Scrolls universe. Also, leave a comment on what topics you would like to see from the channel, or if there are any interesting Easter eggs you think would be worth talking about. Also, feel free to join the Discord through the link below. I am planning some fun video concepts that you guys will be involved in, so if you want to know more or even take part, swing by and hang out while we're at it. Now, I will mostly be covering just Alduin's lore in the Elder Scrolls. I will not delve too deep into the Alduin and Akatosh connection, as I believe that deserves a video on its own, but I will reference it where necessary. There are many tales of Alduin's existence dating back since the Merethic era in Tamriel, with some even believing that not only did he exist long before that, it is also believed that he had actually absorbed or eaten the world that had predated Nirn, hence why one of his titles is the World Eater. This suspected fact about him would also mean that he predates the Merethic era, which would be the Dawn era, meaning Alduin was alive during the creation of Nirn. This is probably the reason why some believe that Alduin is the dragon avatar of Akatosh, since many believe Akatosh to be the dragon god of time. All in all, it all depends on which culture you ask this question to, as there are many interpretations of who or what Alduin is. But one thing we know for certain, Alduin is in fact a real being. No, seriously. Hard to believe, right? Don't take my word for it, but Alduin is a real dragon with flesh and teeth and a mean streak longer than the White River. And there was a time when Alduin tried to rule over all of Skyrim with his other dragons. In the end, it took some mightily strong heroes to finally kill Alduin and be done with his holy sorry story. See? Told you. Although, something wrong with this recollection, those heroes didn't actually kill Alduin, but that's what this video is for. Anyway, the first of Alduin's many horrific deeds in Tamriel started in the Merethic era, in the height of the dragon rule. With the arrival of the dragon cult in Tamriel, along with the Atmorans, they believed the dragons to be the strongest of the animal totems worshipped by the Atmorans, and believed that all of them should worship the dragons above all others, instead of all the animals equally. The dragons, Alduin specifically, decided to play along with the beliefs of the dragon cult, and thus initiated contact with the race of men in Tamriel, and beginning the dragon rule. In the early days of this era, men and Dova actually lived in relative peace, with the dragons mainly communicating through the dragon priests of the cult. But suddenly, these priests started to rule with an iron fist. It is likely that this stemmed from the dragons promising the priests great power in exchange for human sacrifices, in which the dragon priests happily obliged. It is said that the power that they had gained, aside from the support they already have from the dragons themselves, gave them prolonged life, but in a leash-like form, which is why we see the dragon priests as leeches by the events of Skyrim. You could compare this to the transformation of the ring wraiths of the Lord of the Rings franchise after they wore the 9 rings gifted by the Dark Lord. Now eventually, men rebelled against their dragon oppressors that eventually led to the legendary Dragon War. It was initially met with a lack of success, as the dragon's advantage of battling in the sky, the power of their Thu'um, and their race being unified by the power and leadership of the great dragon Alduin, but after divine intervention by Kain, there were dragons in the side of Alduin that had turned on him, one of them being his younger brother and chief lieutenant Paarthurnax. This would have been an event that I would have loved to see happen, as seeing lieutenants of prominent leaders, good or bad, was always an interesting element to put otherwise lesser characters into the spotlight of the story. It would have been interesting to see how the battle would have played out. Now this is a movie I would have paid to see. Anyway, if you want to see details on the Dragon War, I did make a video on that, link will be in the description below. But to cover mainly Alduin, there was not much documentation of how he was involved in the war, at least prior to the battle against the 3 legendary Nord heroes of Skyrim atop the throat of the world. Regardless, once the Nords had learned of the power of the Thu'um, they had used the knowledge to create Dragonrend, a shout that would physically force the dragons to land from the skies, losing their main advantage. While Alduin was a powerful being, he was not immune to the effects of the shout, which was created by the hatred from the Nords to their oppressors. When Alduin was forced to the ground from the effects of Dragonrend, he was shocked. Now, let's keep in mind that as powerful and formidable Alduin is, he is still a dragon, which means he is very prideful of his strength, and as the self-proclaimed firstborn of Akatosh, believes in his own hype a little bit too much to the point where he believes nothing in the mortal world can challenge his strength. Keep this in mind as we continue with the video. Unfortunately, Alduin still proved to be a very powerful foe on the ground, as he killed Gormlaith and severely wounded Hakon One Eye. Not only did it require an Elder Scroll to finally defeat Alduin, it didn't actually kill him. Instead, he was banished to the 4th era, where he went head to head with the last Dragonborn. Thanks, so-called heroes, for making this our problem now. Of course, the heroes at the time didn't know what became of the World Eater, but his absence in the Merethic era caused the collapse of the ruling dragon cult and the dragons, and were effectively routed by the Nords, thus making Skyrim the predominantly Nordic province going forward. However, not everyone relished in the victory, as there were those who believed Alduin was not truly defeated, especially those of the Akaviri Dragon Guard, who had etched their findings about Alduin at Skyhaven Temple in Skyrim, creating Alduin's Wall, which prophesied his eventual return to Skyrim. But a day shall arise when the dark dragon's lies will be silenced forever, and then, for all Skyrim will be free from foul Alduin's maw. Dragonborn be the savior of men. Now, we could go over the contents of Alduin's Wall here, but we still have a bit of Alduin's lore to cover. So if you want to see an entire video dedicated to this wall, leave a like on this video. If this reaches 50 likes, I will cover the contents of the wall in detail. Now, let us fast forward to the 4th era, where Alduin has now arrived. Seeing as Skyrim is dragonless, his plan is to rebuild Skyrim back to the days of the dragon rule, while also eliminating the last Dragonborn, his greatest adversary stated by the prophecy. After failing to do so in Helgen at the beginning of the game, even with the Dragonborn bounded, Alduin proceeds with his resurrection plan. This is where we witness his ability to bring back dragons from the dead, when he brings back Saloknir in Kynesgrove. The interesting thing with the story between the Dragonborn and Alduin was, despite the main storyline revolving around vanquishing the World Eater being the Dragonborn's mission, Alduin seemed indifferent. In fact, apart from the first half of the game and the ultimate battle in Sovngarde, Alduin doesn't actively attempt to kill the Dragonborn himself, instead reviving his fellow dragons to do the work for him. Now, of course, keep in mind that when we faced Alduin in the throat of the world, similar to the events of the Merethic era, we had managed to wound him, and this put Alduin in shock, very similar to when the ancient heroes used Dragonrend on him in the Merethic era. This time, however, Alduin flees, since we don't have an Elder Scroll to banish him yet again, and he flees for Skuldafn, which is a portal to Sovngarde, where he feeds on the dead in order to regain his strength. Now, going back to the belief that he is unstoppable, as the ancient heroes of Skyrim could not defeat him, and believes no one can match him in power, he decides to leave the task of eliminating mortals such as the Dragonborn to the work of his underlings. Now, the interesting thing about this quality of his is that it tells us that despite the last Dragonborn being prophesied to be the one to defeat the World Eater, Alduin does not see the Dragonborn as a threat. This is in stark contrast to a villain like Voldemort from the Harry Potter series, where the main motivation of his was the prophecy stating that Harry was the only one with the power to stop him. Now, in the Elder Scrolls, while it is possible that Alduin has no knowledge of the prophecy by the Akaviri, he does not even acknowledge the Dragonborn, constantly taunting him at every turn. This just shows how much of a narcissist he is, but To be fair, if I was a being with the ability to resurrect the dead, not die from an Elder Scroll, and be told by everyone and everything that I was the strongest being in the universe, to the point where people debate if I am in fact a god, then I would also not put a lot of stock in some prophecy etched in a slab of stone stating someone would be able to defeat me. Unfortunately, this does not end up being the case for the Great Dragon, as during the climax of the story, taking place in Sovngarde, where with the help of the 3 heroes of Skyrim, he is finally defeated in the afterlife and he dies, or seemingly so. Despite that, there are a couple interesting things to note. The first is his final statement being that he cannot be killed, or his defiance that he truly cannot be defeated, and that he will return someday. This is either mere defiance from someone who has been fed with thousands of years of misinformation that he was the strongest being in the world, or perhaps there is more to Alduin than we initially thought. Well, that covers the tale of Alduin and his time in Skyrim. There are many points we referenced in this video that did not go over in detail because I wanted to keep it on Alduin himself. Of course, these videos can and will be covered in later installments of lore content in the channel. So if you want to see those, be sure to like the video and consider subscribing to the channel. And of course, if there are other topics you'd like me to cover, leave them in the comment section below. Other than that, this is Enzo signing out, and I will see you all in the next lore video.